Good morning and welcome to the Extra Point here on ESPN 1600 and welcome to 2021. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, and joined with me today is Jeremy Coleman from Indiana and Robert Parker from New Jersey. There's a lot going on in the NFL. The wild card race is really heating up, but one of the teams I want to jump into today is the New England Patriots. The beatdown that they just took by the Bills. A total rout, right? 38-9. The Patriots just appear to have no interest in this game. There is a lackluster offensive performance. Even at one point when Bill Belichick threw out a challenge, he went to the phone, which he rarely does, and he threw the phone, and the phone ended up breaking. That's something that you normally don't see out of a Bill Belichick on the sideline. That's how frustrated I believe this organization is. I don't know, guys. I think we have seen the last of the dynasty of the New England Patriots. What's your take on this, Jeremy?
Well, it all starts with the quarterback, and they have not gotten good quarterback play all year, if you ask me. Cam Newton is it just looks like he's completely disinterested at times and just not involved at all. New England quarterbacks last night combined to go 9 for 21.
That's insane.
They're not even completing half of their passes. Cam Newton was, he was 5 for 10 for 34 yards. That's the best he did all night. He ran the ball 4 times for 24 yards and 1 touchdown. That's just not going to get it done.
It's very unacceptable. At the professional level, very unacceptable.
Yeah, you've got to find a way to put up points. They're not doing that with either of the two guys there. I think with the new year, New England is going to have to get a new quarterback for next season. Simple as that.
Yeah, I'm right there with Jeremy. I definitely agree. It starts with the quarterback play. And this season, the Patriots haven't had the quarterback play. They've been spoiled over the last, years with Tom Brady. And we know all the championships that Tom Brady has had. So I tell you what, they definitely have to work out that quarterback position moving forward. But if not, you're going to see these seasons under Bill Belichick where, they're going to struggle. And we know they're going to struggle on the defense side this year because of all the opt-outs that they had. But ultimately, it comes down to the quarterback, and we know in order to win championships, you have to have good quarterback play, and that's something that the Patriots haven't had this season. And it goes to show you that the tides are turning. The Bills are the first team who swept the New England Patriots in 2 decades. So there goes the ship turning in favor of every other team in that division, and the Patriots is going to have to compete moving forward, and it's going to be pretty shaky for them unless they shore up that quarterback position.
So I know you guys are talking about the quarterback position, but I tell you where I'm drawing some very unfounded conclusions here, right? Bill Belichick, when he initially took over the Patriots, he had a young Tom Brady that they were able to build up and bring along. And of course, the rest is history. They are what they are. They are a dynasty that will go down in the history books. But now, Bill Belichick, by himself, has had no success. What is your take on this one here, Jeremy? What is Bill Belichick going to have to do to move this organization forward? Because right now it's pretty clear that Bill Belichick has not been able to put these pieces together once Tom Brady departed.
I think that's a great question. I think a lot of it goes into right now, how many people think New England is in a complete rebuild mode? I think this year they tried to see what they could do without Tom Brady. They weren't successful at all. They're going to go up winning only 6 games all year, missing the playoffs for the first time in 2 decades. I think it's was unreasonable, for a lot of people to think that New England was just going to be able to continue on the same path without Tom Brady. I think the real question is how much of an overhaul really needs to happen in New England. Because you do have some nice pieces in New England, but on offense especially, they really just almost need to start over from scratch. Like I said, they're going to need a new quarterback this year. I mean, really, Julian Edelman might retire. He has barely played all year due to nagging injuries, which was a true shame. He's been a great player here over the last decade with playing with Tom Brady. But how much more do we really need to overhaul? I think that's the real question for New England going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jeremy, in regards to New England having to overhaul, especially on the offense side of ball. We see N'Keal Harry get drafted, and it seems like he's not panning out so far. So that's one piece that they invested in the draft that's really not helping them. I mean, of course, not only with Tom Brady at quarterback, but with any other person at the quarterback position. So it really seems like the Patriots team kind of have to break this team down and kind of rebuild from the ground up. And I have all the faith in Bill Belichick to get that done and Robert Kraft and that organization. But once again, when you lose Tom Brady, one of the GOATs, not only for the position, but one of the GOATs in general at, just football, I think that was a big piece. And you had that continuity over the years. And there's a lot of things that you put on Brady's shoulders that you can't put on a young quarterback's shoulders. So once again, I think this is going to have to be a rebuild up. You're going to have to draft that quarterback that you're going to have to develop, or you're going to have to stick with a quarterback for at least, the next 5 to 7 years and getting that one quarterback in there that you can count on. So I think that's the main thing moving forward for Bill Belichick and that organization.
So, Robert, something you touched on, I really want to really harp on for our audience, right? One of the things that the offensive coordinator McDaniels has never had to do is truly develop a quarterback. He's always had Tom Brady. Yeah, a lot of his effort was focused in the playbook, prepping the team year in and year out. But he never had to really truly focus on building or changing the mechanics of a young quarterback because he always had Tom Brady. It even showcased itself when he was hired as the head coach to the Denver Broncos, and then he went ahead and got Tim Tebow. That didn't pan out. So here we are with no Brady, and you bring in a different type of quarterback. You bring in a Cam Newton. You're talking about someone with some extraordinary skills that Tom Brady didn't possess. Did they utilize that skill correctly? I guess that's a debate to be had. But I think one can also say, did Cam also show up to play for the New England Patriots? You've heard me on the show multiple times. I think Cam is done. I think his career is done. He never looked the same when he came back from COVID. And he looked so distant from the game mentally. I know, Robert, you also mentioned that he looks distant from the game physically, just looking how he stepped into the pocket, threw one pass that went into the dirt. I think there's just been this weird boulder effect of the head coach not really prepping his team like you would expect a head coach to do. You got an offensive coordinator who didn't really bring the quarterback into the fold with the organization like they are so used to doing with Tom Brady. And then there's a lot of other missing pieces. They need a big wide receiver threat. They need some pieces on the defensive side. To Jeremy's point, and sadly enough, for all you Patriot fans out there, I hate to say it, but I have to. We're on ESPN Denver 1600. I gotta say it. It's a sports talk show. The New England Patriots are in 100% rebuild mode. Let it soak in. Let it simmer. That's where they are, Jeremy. I'm sorry. I think that's where they are.
I mean, I would have to agree. lots of franchises go through what New England's going through. I mean, you don't just go from a Hall of Fame quarterback to finding the next guy right away. I mean, how many franchises have we seen through the years try to replace, a great quarterback right away? You don't see it happen very often. With the Steelers back in the day, Terry Bradshaw was the great quarterback that led them to 4 Super Bowls. Took them almost 20 years to find a replacement in Ben Roethlisberger that led them back to the promised land. The Colts, kind of a little bit different situation, but they thought they were going to be without Peyton Manning. They had one really bad year where they literally lucked into the first overall pick and got another great quarterback with Andrew Luck. But I mean, there's not too many Aaron Rodgers sitting behind a Brett Favre. Most of the time, you're going to have to go out and find a new quarterback to lead your franchise forward. And when you have to replace a guy like, Bradshaw, 20 years later, Big Ben comes along. There are so many quarterbacks that we could talk about on this show. How do you replace a guy like John Elway, Joe Montana, after all the successes they've had? How do you replace Dan Marino? I mean, Miami has still been looking for their answer down there.
Exactly.
It's not like there's a magic cure-all button that you're going to be able to hit and be able to find a stud quarterback that's going to make it in the league. There are a lot of young, promising quarterbacks that never make it in this league. That's just the reality of the NFL.
One of the arguments that a lot of folks said, and a little bit of compare and contrast, is the fact that, well, Tom Brady departed, and we'll see just how well he does without Belichick, and vice versa. We'll see how well Belichick does without Tom Brady. And I think some folks currently are making the argument, well, hey, the proof is in the pudding. Tom Brady is doing much better than Belichick. I would say that is with a significant caveat. The weapons that Tom Brady has is way different than the weapons or lack thereof that Cam Newton has, to include Cam Newton. So I think you have a total different dynamic, a total different environment. I think it's very unfair to do a compare and contrast between the two because the two environments and the weapons are just way different. But I will say, to your point, I think it's about time for the Kraft family, for Belichick, to even reflect a little bit and say, okay, how do I prove that I'm the true Hall of Fame coach that he will be if I can right the ship? But we all know righting a ship of an organization take years. Maybe you might luck up once in a while and get those Aaron Rodgers, or get a Steve Young behind a Joe Montana. Maybe you might luck up and get something like that. But right now, you're not. And the way you really got beat the other night is clearly a symbol and a message that the dynasty is done. Time to rebuild.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Roland, in regards to rebuilding. But I think one thing that this Patriots organization might have to look into is rebuilding a different way. And that's actually, spending money. One thing that we look at when it comes to this Patriots team is that, they kind of get frugal. They don't pay their players. They want those players to come in on, minimum veteran contracts. They want those players to buy into a team concept. So if you want the rebuild to start a little bit earlier, maybe you do have to go out there and throw some money around in free agency and kind of bring in those, veterans or those younger guys who's transitioning and doing good for themselves. So I think that's a quick rebuild. Maybe that's one way that the Patriots go, as rebuilding through free agency and spending a little bit more money than what we normally see them do. But if they're trying to rebuild through the draft, it's definitely going to take a while. So if we're talking about rebuilding, it's a couple of different ways that you can rebuild. And I tell you what, if they do the latter, it's going to be a little bit longer rebuilding through the draft, because hitting on a quarterback is really a crapshoot. And I know Trevor Lawrence is all world, but I tell you what, it's not too many Trevor Lawrences that's falling off the trees. year in and year out. And same thing with the Andrew Lucks of the world. It's not too many of Andrew Lucks falling off the tree year in and year out. So I tell you what, maybe the Patriots have to go out in free agency and have to spend some money and kind of, take a page out of other teams' playbooks in that regard.
Well, I will also add to that. I don't think Belichick has much longer there. Look, he's not a young chicken. He's not a spring chicken in the game. He's been there and done that, multiple times over. I don't think he needs to prove anything else. He will go down as one of the greatest coaches in the NFL. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame with all the other accolades to boot. He's not going to be there for the next, in my humble opinion, the next 4 or 5 years. I think his time is dwindling down also. Not because he's not coaching well, but because of age and because of all the years he's put in to that organization and into the game. So I think you got to start really thinking long term when it comes to the Patriots on how you actually rebuild this organization. I think the offseason for them is going to be very, very interesting because I don't believe it's a simple fix of the quarterback. I think you're talking about, to Robert's point, going out and spending some serious cash to bring in players who can affect change immediately. And if those players can't affect change immediately, and if they try to rebuild through the draft, I think this is where you have to start looking well beyond 3 to 4 years. You got to start looking at, okay, what is the next chapter of the New England Patriots going to look like? And maybe might have to take into consideration, what is it going to look like without a Bill Belichick? Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned in to The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. And once again, I welcome you into the year 2021. And what better way to kick it off with a conversation about a dynasty that is in trouble and have to potentially rebuild, and that is the New England Patriots. So I'll leave the last word with Jeremy on the Patriots. What's your take on Belichick going into next season?
Well, I just think he has to self-reflect. I know we've talked about it a little bit. He's got to evaluate some more options here to really round out his roster. I feel like obviously we've talked about how he needs a new quarterback. He really needs to just get more receiving weapons. I feel like they have enough running game weapons, and I feel like they have a decent enough offensive line. So I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't feel like, it's fire and brimstone in New England. I do think they can go out, get a few pieces, and field a semi-competitive football team next year to fight with the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills look like they're going to be leading that division going forward for the long haul with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Coach McDermott there.
Speaking of the Buffalo Bills, I tell you, I think the question has to be asked. Ladies and gentlemen, are the Bills a serious contenders against the Kansas City Chiefs? I think anyone can look at the Chiefs and go, hey, just like a light switch, those guys know how to turn it on, they know how to turn it off. But what I fear is when they do turn it off and they struggle, like they struggled just recently, what does that do? What does that do to the Chiefs? And what door does that open for the Buffalo Bills? What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, I think the Buffalo Bills is a legitimate contender to, beat the Kansas City Chiefs and make a deep run in the playoffs and actually, lift the Lombardi at the end of the year, be Super Bowl winners. The way that Josh Allen is playing, he has progressed from last year to this year tremendously. And I don't know if it's the addition of Stephon Diggs, but I tell you what, he's just worked on his mechanics. That defense, what that Buffalo Bills defense can do, and he's just taking the next step. And I tell you what, if they can kind of find somewhat of a run game, I really think they're a legitimate team to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. I really want to see, Zach Moss and Devin Singletary kind of get going a little bit, running between the tackles and running the outside. We know what they can do by stretching the field with Stephon Diggs and underneath with Cole Beasley. So I just want to see the running game a little bit more, and if they can kind of establish that, I tell you what, the Kansas City Chiefs might be in trouble if they match up in playoffs.
Here's what I like about what he is doing back there behind the center. He definitely showcases a serious pocket presence. The guy has an arm. He can, get the small dinks out into the flats. He can sling it down the field. But I love his decision making this year. When he wants to take off, he has the athletic ability to take off. And with his size, he can take on smaller defenders. So I think what they are doing right now is something to be taken serious, not lightly. And if I'm Kansas City, I'm sitting there watching film and I'm thinking, we cannot have a performance like we did before, because if we decide that we're going to try to play the late catch up game, this might be a team that we won't be able to come back, as fast against, because of what they can do offensively also.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Well, one thing I love about the Bills is they're playing their best football at the most crucial time of the year. They're hot entering the playoffs. We have seen what hot teams do when they're entering the playoffs. Shoot, the Giants have beaten the New England Patriots twice and gone on to win Super Bowls by getting hot at the right time of the year. Yeah, I mean, both times as a 6th seed, if I'm correct, going in and beating the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. They are not the most talented team in the NFL. They aren't. But they are playing the best team football right now. Their defense has really started to take off recently here. They're starting to get healthy, and you can tell. Tremaine Edmonds has been a huge asset on defense recently. He went through a little bit of a shoulder injury in the middle of the year. He's starting to play his best football of his young career. Just overall, they're playing great team football. Like Robert said, I do think they need to find a little bit more of the run game just so they continue to stay dangerous in all facets of the offense. But give me a team right now that's playing better than the Bills.
There's few and far between. Right now, the Bills are running on all cylinders. Yeah, they still got some work they can do in that secondary, but I truly believe going up against Kansas City has to bring their A game, point blank, period. Anything other than they will be susceptible to a loss against the Buffalo Bills. And that, I think, will go down definitely in history. And you got to be excited about the Bills, too. The Bills, we were talking about an organization like the New England Patriots who have to rebuild themselves. Look how many years it took the Bills to do the same thing. From a quarterback perspective, from Jim Kelly to now. Now I think they probably feel they have a quarterback that could take them into the future. So I think this is going to be exciting for them. Definitely wish them nothing but the best. But I think Kansas City, I don't like the turn it on, turn it off aspect. Yep, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Yep, you got one of the best wide receivers in the game. You got a great defense. But when you turn off the light switch, I don't think the last place you want to be is playing from behind against a team like the Buffalo Bills, Robert.
Yeah, I definitely agree with, Roland, and Jeremy as well. Buffalo Bills right now, they're clicking on all cylinders. They're playing great ball at the right time. And once again, Josh Allen he's just taking his game to the next level and having a weapon on the outside of Stephon Diggs. I mean, I don't even think you can cover this guy. If you're going to play man coverage, he's going to take the top of the field. If he's going to play zone, he's going to find the middle of the field, and he's going to find the sweet spots. And then you still have to worry about Cole Beasley, and then you still have to worry about the threat of Josh Allen tucking and running. So I really think this Bills team is playing cohesive more so than any other unit. And get back to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're getting bored right now, and it kind of seems like they're the Golden State Warriors of basketball a couple of years ago. It's just when they can't turn on the switch and turn off the switch, and it's just like right now we're bored. We're gonna crank it up in the playoffs, but just like you said, Roland, it might be a little bit too late to kind of crank it up if you fall behind on the Buffalo Bills.
That is for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us here on the Extra Point ESPN Denver 1600. And I hope that everyone this year have a happy new year, a prosperous new year. And here's the best thing to take away. 2020 is behind us. And let's all collectively together leave 2020 where it should be, and that's in the rearview mirror. And let's focus on some greatness and some good things, and hopefully some very positive things as we go into 2021. Thanks for listening in to The Extra Point. Have a great week.